Hi, this is a sound check. Just want to make sure that sound works fine. So if Esther and Raquel, you could confirm. Works great. Excellent. Thank you so much. We'll get started in a minute. All right, I think we're going to get started. Let me activate my camera. You can even see me. Hey, everyone. So glad to have everyone on board here. I turned on the recording. This is András Baneth speaking live from Brussels. I can see the chat. I see many familiar names, and a big shout out to Raquel and Esther, who are helping me with the technical stuff, and they've been instrumental in making this webinar happen. And as I said before, this is being recorded. It's happening live, but certainly the recording will live on for some time. And this is our very first event of this kind when I do a live profile review. And thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join this event. Also, thank you for submitting your profiles. We've got quite a bit of interest there, and I lined up many SpeakerHub profile pages in my browser. So I'll be sharing my screen with you in a second. But with that, wanted to say that it's really courageous from everyone to put your name and your profile out there for everyone to review it, provide comments. And this should be a fun event. This should be a fun exercise where I give you my very best and certainly honest feedback and assessment of what I think could be better in a given profile. I will also tell you what works fine. So it's not all about constructive criticism, but certainly praise as well whenever I spot something which is helpful. Some technical points. One is you can certainly ask questions in the chat box. I may not see it immediately because when I'm sharing my screen, I don't have immediate access to the chat, but Raquel and Esther are there to answer any questions which are not related directly to the topic I'm talking about. If it's more substantive or comments on a topic, on a profile, I'll get back to it either in the webinar or perhaps afterwards I'll follow up. So that's a quick comment, and feel free to have conversations also with each other, not just questions aimed at me. So this should be a joint exercise. And this takes me to the second point, where this is also a peer-to-peer learning. I am not claiming to be the first and foremost wise man on how a profile should look. I certainly have unique perspective, given that I've created SpeakerHub and I've seen hundreds, if not thousands of profiles. So I'll try to share those insights with you. But if you see something and you think that it's worth sharing with others, or a certain point that others could benefit from and apply to their own profile, put that into the chat box and make sure that others hear your perspective, because it's all about helping each other. And I love this American expression that a rising tide raises all the boats, which is exactly what we're trying to do here, is to help each other, the speaker community, to be more successful putting the word out there and having more opportunities to speak. So that's pretty much it. In terms of, let's say, perhaps a legal disclaimer is all these profiles are public, and the owners, the speakers themselves have given their permission to have these reviewed in today's webinar. So this should be pretty straightforward. And again, we're all about positive criticism. It's a review. It's all to make the profile stand out and be more successful to land more speaking gigs. So that's pretty much it. And I may turn off the camera, so it's not going to be a distraction. You can fully focus on the profile and my comments on each of these. Perhaps one final word before I get started. So I've lined up here about 10, 15 profiles, and we'll see how it goes with the comments, with the feedback. I may not have time for all of them. I may have time for all of them, but there are certainly many other profiles that you've submitted, and I will not have time to cover in today's webinar. So in that case, you might send me an email directly, and I can provide a couple of bullet points or a quick few ideas, or you may just take everything that you will hear in the next 40 or so minutes and adapt it to your profile and just make it as good as humanly possible. And then I'll get started with a broad comment saying, whatever I say about one profile, I'll try to frame it in a way that's applicable to everyone else. So it's not just about making that person's profile page better, but it's about ideas, techniques, approaches that will be applicable to everyone else. So hopefully this will be helpful to everyone, not just to the person concerned or the person that will be reviewing. So with that, I'll turn off my camera and start sharing my screen. If technology is on my side, let's hope it is. So I'm sharing my browser in this moment. So hopefully this is something you already see. Let's see, our very first profile is Greg Scott. So I've been in touch actually with Greg. We exchanged a few emails. Very grateful for volunteering to have his profile reviewed. So this is the very first one. So my very first comment would be the header or the banner image where we can see his name. And this is something you might hear me say in connection with other profiles as well, that it's what is the number one idea? What is the number one priority you want to do with your speaker profile? I think the number one thing is to establish yourself in the eyes of an event planner as an authoritative speaker, as someone who commands the stage, someone that they can invite to their conference as a keynote or as a breakout session speaker, but someone who is a speaker. And this is a difficult challenge where you want to balance your pitch as an expert versus your pitch as a speaker. So certainly you want to be an expert speaker of sorts. So the banner is a great opportunity to establish that authority as someone who commands the stage. So in this case, I would strongly suggest that Greg puts an image where he's on the stage with an audience listening to him. Or in some context, he is in a broader, in a crowd that he commands, that he addresses, or he's behind a pulpit or on a podium seen as presenting something. If there's a slide behind him, which shows his topic of expertise, even better. So that combines the speaking aspect and the subject matter expertise as a very first impression. So this in and by itself is insufficient, but it's still of paramount importance that we see the speaker as a speaker. So this is a little bit of a missed opportunity to have this background where there's more that could be done. So that's perhaps the first idea. And then we see a couple of other key points with country or state, availability, fee, etc. I don't think there's anything major to comment on that. The first point in this regard that I notice is there's no testimonial and no recommendation. So I would strongly encourage Greg to ask for testimonials from audiences or event planners he's spoken at. If there are existing testimonials, just send us an email. We'll upload that into your profile. We'll add that, so that should be done. Because it's really important to have third-party validation, to have that sort of endorsement from others that you're not only claiming certain things, but others vouch for you. Going further, bio. What could be done in the bio? The bio is it's a difficult one, because you want to say stuff about your background. What have you done? What is your current situation? What are some of your achievements? Yet the bio is also already a sales pitch of selling yourself as a speaker. So it's a difficult writing exercise, which on the face of it seems simple. And that's why many speakers tend to miss it, where they just simply write a bio. And yet a bio has to be a mix between these two that I just mentioned. Sales pitch or pitch of yourself as an expert speaker, and while you are presenting what your professional background has been. So in this sense, I would suggest some rewriting. I'll probably not go into any further detail there, but to establish your authority that you can address an audience on your topic of expertise because of your professional background, having worked in digital, having worked with large enterprise systems for 2 or more decades. Presentations. The presentation title, I find this one is a nice one, yet it's really aimed at a very specific audience. So I don't think that non-IT experts would know what a pen tester is. I happen to know that because my brother is an ethical hacker. That's a penetration tester of how you can break into systems while ethically making sure that you are there before the bad guys. But this is a good title, and as a general advice for others, the presentation titles you want to put there should really be catchy and offer a true value proposition at the same time. It should be catchy to the degree that a conference organizer could just copy and paste that into the event agenda. And they say, okay, is this a title that I want to feature in my brochure coming up to the event? Well, it's a pretty catchy title for that very specific audience. Now, if Greg wants to present to non-experts or to a broader audience who are not into this very specific area of digital, I would propose to add a couple other presentations as well and make sure that the titles speak to a broader audience too. Past talks, I would encourage you to add more. Why? Because this is really showing that you're an experienced presenter who goes out there a lot, because one past talk would not give you or not give that impression. So try to add more, upload 5, 10, perhaps even more if you have that in your bag. And then going further, in terms of videos, something we'll come back to in a few moments with other profiles, is you probably want to do your first video on stage where you are really seen as a speaker who gives a keynote, or there's just a little trailer or a reel that you put together. And the first one here seems to have been recorded in a room, at least based on the thumbnail, and that is not giving the best impression. Whereas the third one on the right side, already we can see him on stage. That's far better already as a speaker and adds that credibility. So in a nutshell, these are my first initial comments. Some of you may not know, we added recently a new field you can fill in, which is client. So you can list the names of the clients you have worked for or those who have hired you. Again, just that's an element for credibility and establishing yourself as a speaker. So that's my very first comment. Let me quickly jump back and take a quick peek at the chat. Okay, nothing to immediately address. So I'll go to our second profile that I'm going to review, Annalisa. So again, here the banner made me think for a second. Annalisa talks about intercultural issues, and she's an intercultural strategist, which I think is a fascinating topic. And that is kind of reflected in the header, that there are a lot of major newspapers from around the world, their headlines being featured. Now, my first feeling was, well, are these publications, have they featured her? And that's not the message here. It reinforces her topic of expertise. But then going back to my earlier point, I don't think this is the best way to present that in the header, because it does speak to the topic she's an expert on, but it's not directly related to her, because it's not about her achievements, meaning having been featured in these publications. And I don't see references to her as a speaker on these topics based on the header. And then there's the Twitter handle, because culture, that's nice. Again, it references her topic of expertise, but then here again, it's a little bit of a missed opportunity or lost opportunity when it comes to positioning herself as a speaker. And then let's go further. Let's look at perhaps the testimonials first. So in the testimonial, I see there's a nice one. So one of the most compelling speakers, her fresh take on car center perspective. So all positive. Well, obviously, you would probably not put any critical testimonial up there, but it's a good one. Let me just address this topic of what sort of testimonials would I suggest you feature. And as a side note, you can reorder the testimonials that are used on your page. So that's why I'm saying you can choose which one to feature. This is a good length. It's not a one-liner, not a two-liner. It's a decent length. It's not too long, something that someone browsing through her profile or when she applies directly and goes on her page would want to actually read. And that's very helpful. So the testimonial should certainly be positive, but there are different scales, or there's a scale of how positive it could or should be. So if it really talks about you in a little unrealistic terms, it might raise suspicion that, okay, this is not that genuine. This one, it's positive to the right degree. So make sure that the testimonial you pick or the one that you were given, it really kind of hits the mark, but it doesn't go beyond that. Number two, what I'm a little bit missing here is the position of this person. Yeah, here's a name. I might as well Google him. It's a Nick, I see, so it's a him. But then a position would really add a lot to the testimonial's weight, to its power. So what position is this person in? Is it a reputable organization, or this person was the main organizer of a large conference, or what exactly is the context here? That would help a lot. This one, the second testimonial, again, very positive. That's great. And I like the fact that somebody says, well, 5 out of 5. It seems that, yeah, there was some measurement behind it. Or perhaps just the person is very methodical and say, if I were to rate this, here's the scale, that's good. But there's no person behind it. So here's an educational team, that's good. And it's specific, so it makes it more credible. But then I would probably look for the person who gave this. Okay, let's go back to the bio. And well, here's one question you might be asking yourself, and I don't have a strong view on this. It might really be your personal preference. Do you write the the bio? Do you write that in first person singular or in third person? And there are probably different schools of thought there. And well, some speakers tend to prefer third person. If I really were forced to take a position, I'd say first person singular. It's my page. I try to pitch myself. I try to position myself as a speaker. So I would say, here's what I do, here's why I'm qualified to be hired as a speaker. But anyways, this is really just a minor point. But here, Annalisa takes the different perspective from the one we saw with Greg. So it's not just describing what she's done in the past, but already positioning herself that she is a speaker on cultural differences, cultural elements, and how that relates to leadership, to marketing, to technology. That's nice. Presentation section. And well, it says keynote leading in a global village. Yes, this is actually quite good, I would say, though a little too broad, a little too generic for my taste. And again, with all the caveats that this might be fairly subjective, but to say, okay, why is this unique? Why does it stand out from other similar topics or others talking on this topic? Here I would encourage some brainstorming or copywriting, like the one we saw in the previous profile. That is it a title you would an event planner would want to insert into the brochure? Yeah, leading in a global village. Yes, it's very topical. It's important, and yet it's a little dry. Again, for my taste. So I would try to come up with something that's more catching the eye and a little more compelling already as a title. And then data science as a social science, security and privacy across cultural borders. Now, my question here, when I look at this, is how does data science, social science, how does it come together? Is it really her key topic of expertise, given someone that she's a cross-cultural communication expert? And then data science seems, at least I have a question as an event planner, like, are you really the expert on this if your expertise falls in a different box? And here I just stop for a second and say, one of your key goals with a profile, with your speaker profile, is very similar to the way you write a resume. Now, many of you may have not written a resume for a very long time because you're freelancing and you are entrepreneurs. Yet, the dynamics are very similar. When you put your speaker page out there, the last thing you want is that an event planner has doubts or questions about the profile. So you don't want to make them wonder. Make sure that they are really, really able to put you in the right box. You might be very uncomfortable with this idea that, hey, I don't fit in one single box. Well, that's fine. Maybe you fit in 2 or 3 boxes, but event planners, they want to see, okay, this is a motivational speaker. This is a cross-cultural speaker. This is a technology speaker or IT security speaker. This is a women empowerment speaker. And if you can have that consistent narrative in your profile, you probably have a winner. And if you speak on 2 or 3 very different topics, try to somehow give a reason or explain why you are qualified to speak on 2 or 3 different topics. Because the minute an event planner starts wondering, they say, well, how can somebody be an expert on 3 different topics? Maybe this person is not as trustworthy as I thought they were when I first spotted their profile. Maybe I'll skip. So ultimately, it really is a trust issue, that they trust your expertise, your profile, your speaking skills to the extent that they are willing to give you a try. And that is really at the heart of it. So event planners are taking a bigger risk, especially if you have not spoken with their organization before, or if you have not been recommended by someone that they trust, and they are really just searching around on SpeakerHub and come across your profile and say, how can I trust this person not to embarrass me? Can I trust this person to the degree that I will look good in the eyes of my boss, and making sure that the audience will be happy? So everything you do, you want to not only minimize the doubt, but increase the trust by every means possible, especially through your words. So that's my motivational part of it. Let's look at the videos. Here I see two thumbnails which do not display. Now, I trust that this is not an issue on our end, so it's not a technical problem. So maybe the embed link or the link that they provided was not correct, or it had a typo or something, or just the system didn't pull it in for one reason or another. It doesn't look so good. So make sure that the thumbnail really shows, and it shows an image that again reinforces the pitch you want to sell. Sample slide number 2, bias in artificial intelligence. So again, I'm left wondering, how does that compare to the cross-cultural, intercultural aspect? It does, certainly it does, because there's a lot to do with how AI might be skewed against certain cultural patterns. There's a lot to say that, but again, somehow address it up front. So AI and cross-cultural communication, connect that and make sure that, in my eyes, as the viewer, as the reader, as the organizer, this question is answered even before I can verbalize it as an organizer. So you want to be proactive in addressing those questions. This way you create even more trust. Let's see what else. Intuitive interpreting, a couple of books and articles. Perhaps no comment. I would probably click on these and look around. But these are my initial comments. There's probably more ideas to discuss, but I think you got a few ideas there which are applicable not just to Annalisa's page, but to others as well. Again, I'll jump back for a second, and I see a couple of comments. So I'm actually got speaking gigs. Okay, we'll let that conversation pan out while I go on to the next profile. So we have here Dr. Jacinta. Let me just refresh the page because I was logged in as an admin, so it displayed even more information. Here we go. Again, the banner is providing a pitch, tap the good, expanding minds and opportunities for successful futures. Yes, but it's a little broad. It's a little too generic for me. I would make it much more specific. And again, the trade-off between topic versus speaker, it needs to be bridged. Let me just jump down a little bit, because as you'll see that Jacinta is here, Toastmasters first place winner trophies. Here's what we can see with the trophy. That's good stuff. This is powerful stuff. And Toastmasters is a great brand. Toastmasters is a well-known organization by almost everyone who's dealing with public speaking. And this is something to capitalize on, because it reinforces her claim that she's a great speaker. So that's pretty good. In terms of, now, since we're down here, the speaking reel, the fact that there's a speaking reel, that's good. And then this image is also very nice as a thumbnail, where she's seen on stage passionately presenting about a topic. So let me go a little bit further up and dissect the profile a bit. So again, similar comment for the testimonials, that I don't see the surname of the person. That's fine. There might be privacy issues at play. But then what is the organization that this person represents? And well, it's written inside the testimonial, but it would be nice to put that into the signature as well. Bio, you might not know, but there is a possibility to do multiple bios for your profile. So here's bio 1, bio 2. That depends on where you are pitching yourself, or which event are you pitching yourself for. So this way you can upload different bios and highlight different parts of your profile. Now here the bio 2 is empty, so it might be a little glitch in her profile that she entered a field. So just make sure to clean that up and remove it if it doesn't have any specific information. And then let's go further, presentations. Now, here's the first one. So emotional intelligence, healing from abuse to assault. It's a keynote speech where she uses her personal story about her migration to the US, and then a man who turned into sour heart, domestic, physical, mental, financial abuse, how she ended up living on the street in California, and she bounced back to pursue higher education. This is very powerful, and yet the description, I think it stops before it begins. Here's what I mean. The description shows that there's a very, very powerful, difficult, and important personal story that she shares. And yet, I say it stops because it's like starting a sentence, but the other half of the sentence is, how is that applicable to the audience? How is that going to help a corporate audience, a national convention, a high school audience? What are they going to do with it? And this is something I see often when it comes to presentations and titles, where there's not enough emphasis on what does it give to the audience. Why is it relevant, important, helpful to the audience? So to say, I'm an expert on, and fill in the blank, this is fine, but then here is what it's going to mean for you. This can mean that your team is going to be 3 times more motivated after my speech to focus on this important issue than before. Or emotional intelligence is just such a topical thing in the workplace today, and say, here is my personal story, and here is how it ties into your business goals. So this is, again, as a general comment, make sure that there's a very clear understanding from the organizer to say, okay, this means you've been personally affected by some very difficult things in your life, and say, okay, this is how you're going, this is why you talk about this, but what does it give to me at the end of the day? They definitely, desperately, they want to know where is the match between what you're selling and what I'm buying. Here's another one, which is actually better, much better from this perspective. Communication using the art of persuasion to connect more customers. So there's a pretty clear pitch saying, I'll teach you how to be more persuasive so you can connect to more customers. And there's a description of learn how psychologically proven art of persuasion tools you can use, scientifically proven ways to be more persuasive, discover how to turn rebuttals into sales. This is better, as I said before, absolutely better. It's more specific because you talk about 5 specific things, 10 specific things that I'm going to teach you. This is more about, let's say, it's in the gray zone between a presentation and a workshop, and it can fly as both. What I'm a little bit missing is that it's still relatively on the input side. So saying, here is my talk, and it's well thought through. I have a very specific thing to share with you, but then again, missing the part, what's the outcome or what's the impact my talk is promising you. You cannot guarantee that your sales teams afterwards are going to triple their sales, sure, and you don't want to enter into legally difficult territory where you claim something that may or may not happen, but you can say, well, as a result of the talk, this is what you can get out of it. Or other clients who've used or who've hired me for this speech, this is what they reported. That you can certainly claim because that's a given. Those are fact-driven claims. So make sure that the corporate, the HR manager, or the corporate communications expert, or the secretary general in the trade association that's organizing next week's convention or next year's convention understands that, okay, this seems like a good topic because our sales team is not so persuasive. Fine. And we have a pretty clear understanding what the speaker would deliver. Fine. But how am I going to tell my boss that, okay, we're going to pay her that amount of speaking fee, and in the end, what can we reasonably expect to get out of it? So make sure that those results, the outcomes, and the impact is clearly shown. So that's pretty much it. Again, I'll jump back to see if there is any other points there. Okay, let's go on to our next speaker. Here is Chip Morrison. So Chip actually put a nice image up there. So even with the screen in the back, Chip Morrison Power Selling Seminars, I like that. The image is a little small, so ideally try to format that in a way that there is no black space or anything that may not look in the best possible way. But let's scroll down and see what else we've got on his profile. So the picture, I think, is unique, and that's nice, where he's in a business suit, where he's with open arms, a very with very sort of approachable manner. The testimonial, I see there are 73 testimonials. That's an impressive number and a lot of feedback from audiences. So that's really good. And this is something that you can certainly do on presentation, where you tell the audience, click here, give me a feedback, and make my profile more robust if you like my speech. Going back to the testimonials for a second, yes, there's a lot. Again, would be good to put the organization, perhaps make it a bit longer. So it's good that someone endorses a person, but we want to know, we meaning a potential organizer, wants to know, okay, I want to know more. Why are you good? So if you're soliciting a testimonial from someone, try to ask them, well, can you give me a few reasons why you liked my speech? Because you energized the audience like no other speaker, because we immediately had 3 great ideas as a result of your speech. So all of this would make a testimonial more robust. And I just, for 1 second, I get a message from our team, and I'm trying to see what these are. Okay, I got those messages. So basically, there are 2 people asking for the review. If it doesn't fit today's time frame, I'm very happy to follow up bilaterally or privately and offer some more feedback. So just to make sure that point is emphasized. So going back to this point is looking at the bio, and I'm trying to find points which I've not yet covered regarding the other profiles. What else here? I think the media content is really important, where you need to be seen addressing the audiences you want to be addressing. I think this is an important point. Let me repeat. You need to be seen addressing audiences, the kind of audiences you want to address. And this is a little bit of a chicken and an egg problem, because if you want to address an audience of 5,000 people at a national convention, and you've never done that before, how can you position yourself in that regard? You might be able to do that as a free speaker, because you get an invitation to deliver a short speech, and you can use that opportunity to then position yourself for something that is paid and that is a higher level. So that's one way of going about it. Another way could be that you speak about a topic where you don't necessarily have that sort of audience, but you deliver a speech which is recorded in the most professional way possible. So if you have the budget, a bit of a budget, but still you have the budget to have 2 or 3 different angles of camera, that the audio is professionally done. The topic that you talk about, you can summarize that in a minute or 2. That is usually convincing enough for an event planner to say, okay, this person can deliver that in such a way that I'm going to have the confidence to hire her or hire him for the right audience. So let me go a little bit back. What else do we see here? Presentations and past talks. So I think the presentation and past talk is a really important part of the profile, as we said before. It's a really important part where you are pitching your topic of expertise and finding finding the right words, the right positioning is really your best selling point. When an event planner says, okay, can I just copy paste this into my agenda? That's helpful. If they say, okay, I'm not exactly looking for this, but could this speaker do that topic? In that case, they might just not bother to get in touch with you. And that's why you very strategically want to put the presentations, the different angles you're able to approach, put it all out there so that an event planner can immediately have an idea what they can use you for. If they say, well, I'm looking for something slightly different, well, in that case, they might just move on to the next speaker. Let's look at a little bit at an area, at a box we've not yet addressed, and that is why choose me. So the why choose me, it says a proven success expert that entertains, educates, engages, and connects with audiences worldwide. This is a really difficult part of a profile. I fully acknowledge that, and it's not an easy feat to do. Why? Because the why choose me, many speakers understand it that they need to say something about their expertise. Well, that's one approach. Others understand it to talk about why am I going to be a great presenter at your event. That's another approach. Others may say, well, I just need to talk about my own credibility and presentation style because that's what's going to cut it. So I don't think I have the right or even have the strong opinion which approach to use. Is if you can give there something that like a true value proposition and say, I'm going to deliver this to your audience, perhaps that's a powerful approach. Because again, focusing on the difference between what is my input versus what is your benefit or what is your outcome. So in this one is a little bit on the input side, saying I'm a proven expert, here's my approach, but what is the organizer going to get out of hiring you? And I understand that Chip is a great expert. He's got decades of experience, and there's a lot he can deliver. So I probably would try to craft some message saying, I'll put my 45 years of experience, or sorry, 45-year real estate expert. Okay, so I say I put my 20-year experience to help your sales team double their revenue in a year. Again, trying to find something that is not or say over promising. Again, I'm doing this on the fly, so I'm not saying this should be the final wording. But then again, looking at the impact of the talk, what is going to come out of that. Good, and I see that from Raquel, there's a message. I'll try to review one or two more profiles. And then we'll get back to the chat if there's any other question, because our time is slowly running out. But as promised, whoever would like a personalized feedback, I'm very happy to offer that in the next couple of days via email. So here is Matthias, who is Green Man, inspire organizations to go green with a talk, greenest person on the planet, Green Icon of the Year award. This is pretty unique, and that helps me raise a point where you as a speaker and your topic as a speaker have to be unique. It's really the unique selling proposition combined with the trust issues we spoke about before. Uniqueness, I think this is pretty obvious from the way Matthias presents himself on his page. What I'm wondering about here again is how his profile and his talk, what is exactly is his message? Well, okay, going green, that's the main message, I understood. But if I look at it from a business perspective, and many of you would certainly want to speak to a business audience, at least if for nothing else, then usually they have much bigger budgets than any other type of organization. And when you have a business audience, they understand numbers, and either by increasing their profits or decreasing their costs. And I think environmental issues are extremely topical these days, and finding the connection with a business audience that, apart from doing good, apart from endorsing an approach which is helpful from an environmental perspective, it's just simply from an ethical perspective, there's also a strong business case for it. And presenting that is a really good narrative. The next one here, looking at presentations, I think there's just too much information in a single presentation box. So I would certainly separate these into multiple pieces and multiple presentation topics to make sure that it's the value proposition or the topics that organizations can hire Matthias for are fully aware of the different topics, the different aspects of his expertise that he can deliver. In terms of the images and videos and the others, I think that's a very strong point in his profile, and that is certainly helping his pitch far more. One more thing I wanted to share with you before we close today's session, and that's a topic which has come to mind when some speakers contact me or I review some profiles. The topic you talk about is certainly your most important expertise. So you talk about this because this is what you know, this is what you've lived through, this is what you're an expert on. But try to think about your topic of expertise in a much broader sense. Here's what I mean. So in this case, it's environmental issues. That's fairly broad. But this talk can really be sold to a range of audiences, to very, very diverse audiences. So if somebody talks about environmental issues, or you talk about emotional intelligence, or you talk about leadership, or you've given a TEDx talk on the importance of lifelong learning, there are audiences you can speak to which you may not have normally thought about. If it's a large conference on self-driving cars, well, you could talk about aspects of emotional intelligence because there's a workforce dealing with that you can address. If you talk about the importance of resilience, you can sell that talk to an audience of emerging leaders in let's say emerging leaders in manufacturing facilities. It's really trying to broaden the scope of the audience, and not just, even if your topic might be relatively technical or you've thought about a narrow audience, you can reframe it and present that to other audiences as well, which certainly opens up a lot of new possibilities for you. So let me just jump back, stop my screen share, and see some questions that were asked in the past few minutes or so presentation. And at the same time, I'll share with you my contact details and this fancy picture of me with the Madonna mic. I think that's what it's called when I gave a TEDx talk. So feel free to reach out to me, sign me up on LinkedIn, send me an email. And I'm just fishing for any questions that I may not have addressed so far, but I'll review these as mentioned before. And I certainly understand that more profiles are still in the queue. So I'm pretty sure we'll be repeating this type of webinar in the very near future. And we'll draw all the conclusions and lessons of how to best structure it, of how to pick the right profiles, and how we can be most helpful for the speaking community. So I think with that, we'll stop right here. So thank you so much. and I hope it was helpful. I hope I gave you a bit of food for thought, and you can review, improve your profile, use it to pitch yourself and to apply for speaking opportunities. And hopefully this will lend you great experiences, new speaking gigs, and a fun way ahead in 2020. And if and when you have a great success, or as a result of a revamped profile, you landed new opportunities, let us know. We're always happy to hear. And of course, always happy to hear feedback, whether it's critical, whether it's positive, whether it's just some ideas for improvement. Please let me know. We're always listening and very happy to improve the platform to the best possible way. So with that, a big thanks to Raquel and Esther and everyone who joined the call, and to be followed very soon. Have a nice day ahead, and see you virtually very soon, I hope. Thanks again.